At a town hall event on Saturday, Gigi, a 27-year-old disabled constituent, directly challenged Chief Secretary to the Treasury and Bristol North West MP Darren Jones over the government's proposed cuts to personal independent payment. Holding a banner that said PIP, Lifeline not pocket money, Gigi responded to a previous remark by Jones in which he likened PIP benefits to giving his children pocket money. Gigi also highlighted the case of Jodie Whiting, a 42-year-old woman who died by suicide in 2017, just days after the DWP stopped her disability benefits. The intervention was organised by Mad Youth Organise and Green New Deal Rising as a part of the latter's Pay Up campaign, which calls on the government to implement wealth taxes to fund public services, climate action, and serve as an alternative to austerity-driven cuts. The confrontation comes as the government reportedly considers softening its planned PIP cuts following strong opposition from Labour MPs. A parliamentary vote on the matter is expected later this month. We also have a video of Gigi challenging Darren Jones.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, Darren, but you just announced cuts to affect people like me, disabled people like me. 300,000 people are going to be pushed into poverty. You compared PIP to pocket money. It is not pocket money, it is a lifeline. There are people's lives at risk here. People are going to die. Jodie Whiting, do you know Jodie Whiting? She died housebound alone because the DWP cut support. Why don't you get the richest to pay up and pay and fund for healthcare rather than attack people like us who are already poor and disabled? Shame on you for not speaking up on this. Shame on you. Tax the rich instead of affecting people like us who are already the most vulnerable in society. Shame on you.
Whose side are you on, Darren?
Whose side are you on?
On the super rich. You have a choice. This is going to kill people.
This will kill people.
You have a
People's
choice.
lives in their hands.
You have a choice, Darren.
Now, I caught up with Gigi earlier today and discussed what went down on Saturday. What made you decide to confront Darren Jones?
Hi, thank you so much for having me here. Yeah, so I decided to confront Darren Jones because he is my MP at Bristol North, so I'm part of his constituency, firstly. And secondly, he is Rachel Reeves' deputy at the Treasurer. And currently, his department is pushing cuts that will directly affect people like me, disabled people like me. So these are disability cuts that he has suggested, or the government has suggested. And he also revealed quite a callous attitude behind these cuts by a comment he made a while ago comparing PIP benefits to pocket money. And though I have to say that he has since apologised, I think that's just quite emblematic of how people in this society and in the government still think of people who are disabled or people who need additional support. Like, disabled people are part of the fabric of society. We all know someone who experiences mental illness, has a disability, a chronic condition, or even a terminal condition. This is a reality, and disability and illness is part of everyday life. I actually tend to say that we're all pre-disabled. We all at some point will need support. And we all know someone, whether a friend, a relative, loved one, neighbour, colleague. And I just really strongly believe the state should be supporting us during these difficult times. And the government has historically not listened to disabled people. And I did this mainly because I finally wanted us to be heard, because I think so many people have been trying to have conversations with politicians and just not be heard. Disabled people's voices are always fobbed off, and that's how it feels. We've historically just not been listened to. And this current proposition, these disability cuts, could push hundreds of thousands of people into economic hardship. And people are already in economic hardship. So I believe the number could be 300,000 people could be pushed into economic hardships if these proposed cuts go through. And I also do want to say that it already is much more expensive to be disabled. So I think it's estimated around £1,000 extra a month. On all the living costs associated with disability. And by the way, the highest amount of PIP doesn't cover that. So £1,000 is not possible to get on PIP. And most people get a much smaller amount than that. And I also think another huge misconception around these cuts or disability benefits, especially PIP, is that it's an out-of-work benefit. A lot of people who are on PIP still do work. And in fact, PIP allows them to work. And, I think part of this rhetoric, or part of the reason that the government want to cut disability benefits, as well as the fact that they're making cuts in other parts of government, is trying to push people back into work, because they're saying there's too many people out of work. And I'm telling you, this is not going to work, because PIP allows people to work. PIP is a lifeline for people to be able to work, whether that be through transport, mobility aids, healthcare access. PIP is not an out of work benefit, and that's something that people really, really need to understand. And it's not going to push people back into work. And I think just one additional thing, if I may say, recently there was some leaks around some potential access to work changes, which is so access to work is part of the government's access for people to be able to access work, and they can get job coaches. You can get some support in terms like mobility aids or workplace changes to make it more accessible. And these cuts, these changes, these leaked changes, would have an even more worrying effect on disabled people's access to work. So it's really, really a worrying time. And I just felt like something had to be done about it, or I wanted to put my voice out there.
What's the response been like? I mean, did you hear anything back from the government or any official? But also, what's the response been like from, the members of the public?
Yeah, so we did reach out to Darren Jones for comment, and he has not got back to us. We have been ignored, which I'm not that surprised about, to be honest. And in terms of the feedback from the public, it has been widely really, really positive. I will say that I think a lot of people really appreciated it. But there has been a minority, but kind of quite a substantial minority, if that makes sense, of people backlashing. And because I appear able-bodied, people, a lot of comments have been around the fact that I don't look disabled, that I look fine, that I've had comments being like, if she can hold up a banner and walk out the room, then she should be able to work. That there was a good 200 comments, perhaps more, commenting on the fact that I look able-bodied. And I think that, again, is really emblematic of how far we still have to go with the public understanding of disability. So between 70 to 80% of disabilities are invisible. So you just can't see it. You cannot see it. And despite the fact that like on the London Underground, you'll still see little signs saying not all disabilities are visible, and you see that on toilet doors, etc. We still just have a really long way to go for people to truly understand that. And I think the response to this video really showed me, like, wow, we have to do a lot more campaigning and awareness of the fact that the majority of disabilities are invisible, but that does not mean that they're any less disabling.
Do you think then, given that there is a wide misconception of people with disabilities, as you mentioned, 70 to 80% of people have disabilities that are invisible, right? That the entire media is not covering disability rights and activism enough, and not just the mainstream media, but actually even left-wing media. Do you think that they're still being ignored a lot, and progressive left-wing media needs to do more?
Oh, 100%. I really, really do think that disabled voices are not being heard enough. Again, as you said, not just in the mainstream media, but also in progressive left-wing outlets. I do really think that it's the job of especially the left-wing media, who are obviously covering a lot of progressive issues, to make sure that disabled people's voices are being heard, that people who experience mental illness and all types of disability, because obviously disability is one word which covers so many different experiences, but we need our voices to be heard more, 100%. And, I'm glad to be seeing some of it. I am seeing some outlets slowly start to talk about it more. And I'm hopefully this will be a bit of a domino effect right now, because obviously it's so present and salient in society, what's happening right now in the UK. I'm hoping that this will springboard the media to start talking about it more, and to start spotlighting the issues that are facing disabled people more.
So you were there on behalf of Green New Deal, Rising and Mad Youth. Can you tell us a little bit about these campaigns?
Yeah, absolutely. So Green New Deal are a youth movement, and they are fighting for a Green New Deal. So that's a bold plan essentially to stop the climate crisis and tackle inequality through mass public investment. We know this, we need to fund the public investment. And one of the big ways that Green New Deal are wanting to do that is through fair taxation. So that means asking the super rich to pay their fair share. And they have just launched their Pay Up campaign to demand the government introduce wealth taxes on the booming fortunes of the super rich. So stop cuts and invest in climate action, affordable homes, good schools, good hospitals, and an economy where everyone can thrive. And Mad Youth Organise is a campaign led by young people with lived experience of mental distress and madness, so myself included in that. And we are organising to build a collective response to the crisis we're facing. And we're calling out the corporate drivers of the youth mental health crisis and the systemic issues that are contributing to the worsening state of mental illness and mental health in the UK. Right now, as you can tell by the protests we just did, we're directing our energy towards organising to oppose the cuts to disability benefits, as they will disproportionately impact young people and young people who live with mental illness.
I just want to finally ask you, is this something that you expected from a Labour government?
I mean, absolutely not. I think I'm not alone in being totally horrified in the consistent U-turns that the government has been doing since coming into power. It's certainly not, I think, the Labour Party that most people voted in, and it's not the Labour Party that a lot of us have ever imagined would end up being the Labour Party. And I think it's really, really saying how disillusioned people are becoming of Labour, and the trust is being lost at a really alarming rate. And it's really worrying. There's no doubt that it has a strong correlation with the rise in reform and the rise in far-right sentiment as a backlash to this. It's incredibly disappointing and, to be honest, really, really terrifying.
I have to say, fair play to Gigi. I think it takes guts to really stand up, especially to an MP in front of those people. You're putting yourself out there. So I have a lot of respect for Gigi. That comment as well by Darren Jones about PIP being pocket money. I know he apologised, but it was absolutely disgusting. Should have never been said in the first place. Kevin, what do you make of this challenge to Darren Jones?
I loved it, and I want to say thank you to Gigi for having the bravery and the backbone to stand up like this, because I think we need much more of this. Because if Darren Jones, who for me sums up the kind of briefcase bureaucrat wanker that's destroying this country, if people like him, who just because he's wearing a suit and tie get away with social murder, we need to make sure these people, whenever they're out in public, they never know a day's peace again in their lives. If they're going to insist on stamping down on the least powerful and the least able to defend themselves whilst doing the bidding of the richest constantly, if they're going to aid and abet the genocide of the people of Gaza, if they're going to oversee the country's destruction, both in terms of its physical infrastructure and its kind of, social infrastructure, these people should never know a day's peace ever again. I want to see far more of this, far more direct action to show them how disgusted we are with them, how unpopular they are, and how they need to change their policies fundamentally. And so, big up to Gigi and those organisations. We need a lot more of that.
Yeah, and speaking to Gigi, because I asked him about the public response to. I mean, obviously, we can talk about the policy. We can talk about Darren Jones. We know that Labour's policy on PIP and welfare is nothing short of disgusting. But the public response, I mean, Gigi told me there's been a lot of positive response, but the loud minority was saying, well, you're clearly not disabled, right? You're scrounging. And they made a very good point that it's not always visible.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Mental health is, really the great health scourge of the nation that just goes completely untreated. Government after government will make kind of nice noises about it around election time and then invest absolutely nothing in it. We basically don't have a mental health care system in this country. And as to the point you made there about the loud minority, there really is an element within this country of the crabs in the bucket type thing, the people who are constantly trying to drag down others. But also, I feel slightly sorry for a lot of those people too, because they're as big a victims of the manufacturing consent machine as anybody else. They've been taught all of their lives that these people who are desperate in society are actually scroungers. Rather than being the victims of the society, they are somehow the benefactors of the society. And accordingly, they vote against their own best interests constantly. That's why the Conservative Party have ever received any votes in this country, and why the Reform Party are currently leading in the polls, because the media sells the British public a pack of lies.
And also, in terms of visibility and disabilities, there's also physical disabilities that aren't always visible. Sometimes when it comes to chronic illness or anything like that, it's not always like constant 24/7. Sometimes it can flare up and be worse than others. So people might be like, well, this person's clearly able-bodied. They're actually quite athletic. And again, like, I do kind of sympathize with those who are sort of being propagandized, or not even propagandized, who just don't realize, because obviously, to someone who doesn't know much about disabilities and about the work that activists do and awareness of it, you can understand the logic by saying, you look at someone who clearly is physically abled and they're saying they're disabled, and you go, well, clearly they're not. It's an ignorant point of view to have. It's why it's so important to sort of platform these issues.
It is, absolutely. Although, of course, it's worth bearing in mind that the government's plans include people who are obviously going to be very visibly disabled as well. People who literally can't clean below their own waist without assistance. That's not something that one can really hide all that well. So it's the government are going to go after everybody, because all disabled people, I should say, because this is not about helping out anybody. I mean, Gigi made the very good point that this won't help disabled people back into work. But of course, the point is that it's not meant to. It's just meant to be punitive. It's just meant to attack the least able to fight back in society, rather than putting a tiny amount of tax on the absolutely grotesque amounts of money being stockpiled by the richest 100 people in the country.
Support independent media. Support social justice that's there on social media. Thank you. Turn left.